stood at the edge of her property and watched the old train car being dragged across the dirt. The metal was brown with rust. The windows were broken. The roof had holes that you could see through, but did not care about any of this. She knew what she wanted to do. The auction had taken only 10 minutes. Nobody else wanted the train car. It was old, broken, and useless to everyone in the town, but had raised her hand when the auctioneer called out $500. She was the only bidder. Now the train car sat on her land in rural Colorado, and her neighbors thought she had lost her mind. Was 43 years old. She had worked as a scientist for 20 years before she quit her job and moved to this small town. She did not have much money, but she had something that money could not buy. She had a plan. She had a vision. And she had decided that this broken old train car was the only way to make that vision real. She did not tell anyone what she was going to do. When her neighbors asked, she simply said she was working on a project. When the mailman asked, she smiled and said it was just a hobby. When her sister called from the city, said she was keeping busy. The truth was something she kept to herself. For the first week, worked alone. She bought tools. She bought metal patches and bolts and wood and paint. She rented equipment to help her lift the heavy pieces. Every morning at 5, she woke up and went to work. Every evening at 6, she stopped and went inside to eat and sleep. She worked like this 7 days a week. The work was hard and painful. Her hands got blistered, her back hurt. Her arms became sore and tired, but did not stop. She had made a decision, and she followed through on every decision she made. That was the kind of person she was. By the second month, the train car was starting to look different. The broken windows had been removed. The holes in the roof had been patched, had stripped away the worst of the rust with power tools. She had started painting the outside with fresh metal paint. From a distance, you could see that someone was trying to save this old thing. People in the town began to notice. They drove past her property and slowed down to look at the train car. They talked about it in the coffee shop and at the grocery store. Some people thought she was fixing it up to live in it. Others thought she was trying to make it into a museum. Nobody guessed the truth. Continued her work. She reinforced the metal frame. She checked every bolt and every weld. She made sure the structure was solid and strong. This was important because what she was going to put inside the train car needed a strong foundation. She needed to know that the train car could hold weight and last for a long time. In the third month, started on the inside. She removed all the old seats. She removed the rotting carpets and the broken fixtures. She cleaned every surface until it was bare metal and wood. This took weeks. The dust made her cough. The work was boring and repetitive, but did not mind. She was patient. Then one day, the news came on the television. Was eating breakfast when the news anchor started talking about something that would change everything. A probe had appeared in space. It was not from Earth. Scientists did not know where it came from, and it was heading directly toward the planet. Stopped eating and watched the screen. The news showed pictures of the probe from telescopes. It was shaped like a sphere and it had lights on it. Nobody knew what it wanted. Nobody knew if it was dangerous. Within hours, the news became more serious. The probe had sent a message. The message said that the probe belonged to the Empire. They wanted Earth's resources. They wanted biological specimens. They wanted to harvest the planet. And if Earth did not respond to them within 3 weeks, they would begin the process. The world went crazy. People panicked. Governments called emergency meetings. Military leaders were called to the Pentagon. Scientists worked day and night to understand the message. Religious leaders prayed. Parents held their children close and worried about the future. But did something different. She went back to work on her train car. Nobody noticed that was working faster now. Nobody saw that she had stopped sleeping normal hours. She was awake at night installing equipment that she had been collecting for months. She had old computers. She had scientific instruments that she had bought from second-hand shops and online stores. She had radio equipment. She had screens and keyboards and cables. Worked with a speed that seemed impossible for one person. She ran electric lines through the train car. She set up banks of equipment along the walls. She tested everything many times to make sure it worked. She had a plan, and the plan was simple, but nobody would understand it, not yet. The military started working on weapons. Scientists talked about shields and defenses. Political leaders debated surrender or fight. The whole world was thinking about how to survive the threat from space. And worked inside her train car, day and night, installing her equipment and preparing for something that nobody else had even thought of. 3 weeks went by fast, had little time to sleep. She had little time to eat, but she did not stop. She kept installing equipment. She kept testing systems. She kept preparing the train car for its purpose. On the last day, 2 days before the deadline, finished her work. She sat back and looked at everything she had built. The train car was filled with equipment now. Screens covered the walls. Cables ran everywhere. The equipment hummed with electricity. Press the power button. Every light on every piece of equipment came to life. The screens flickered and glowed. The computers began to hum. The radio transmitter warmed up and started broadcasting a signal that could reach every corner of the Earth. She had named it the Archive. It was not a weapon. It was not a military device. It was something different. Something that nobody had thought of during all their meetings and debates about how to survive the threat. Sat in front of the main screen and took a deep breath. Then she began to speak. Her voice was calm and clear. She spoke slowly so that everyone would understand her words. She explained who she was and where she was broadcasting from. She told the world that she had built something inside an old train car. She told them that in the next few hours, she would be sending a message to the probe. But it was not the kind of message that military leaders or politicians wanted to send. The world was listening. News channels cut into their programming to carry her broadcast live. People stopped what they were doing to hear what this woman from Colorado had to say. They did not know her name. They did not know what she had done. But they knew that she was doing something important. Explained the Archive. She said that humans were more than just biological specimens to harvest. She said that humans were creators and artists and thinkers. She said that human culture was valuable and precious. And she had spent the last 3 months collecting examples of the best things that humans had created. She had music. She had photographs of human families. She had paintings and drawings and sculptures. She had videos of teachers teaching students. She had recordings of doctors saving lives. She had films of ordinary people helping other people. She had poetry and books and songs written in languages from every part of the world. Had gathered all of this material. She had organized it. She had compressed it into a format that could be transmitted through space. And now she was preparing to send it all to the probe. Governments tried to stop her. Military officials demanded that she shut down her broadcast. They said she was speaking without authority. They said she was making decisions that could affect all of humanity. But they could not stop her. Her broadcast was too strong. Too many people had already picked up her signal. Too many people were watching and listening. Continued, she explained that she was sending them something that no civilization had probably sent them before. Not weapons, not technology, not military secrets. She was sending them human art, human music, human emotion. She was sending them the record of human consciousness itself. Sent her first file. It was a video of a mother holding her newborn baby. The video showed the mother crying. She was crying because she loved this new life, this small human that she had brought into the world. The probe received the video. Then sent another file. It was a recording of a man playing guitar. He was playing a sad song about loss and grief. His fingers moved across the strings. His eyes were closed. He was feeling every note of the music. Then another file, a painting of a sunset over an ocean, a child's drawing of her family, a poem written in Spanish about love and hope, a film of a teacher standing in front of a classroom explaining mathematics to her students, a photograph of an old man's hands, weathered and strong from years of work, a recording of music from Africa, a video of people dancing together in celebration. For hours, sent files. The archive grew larger and larger. It filled the probe's memory with human creativity. It showed what humans had created when they were not thinking about survival or conquest. It showed what humans made when they wanted to express beauty and emotion and meaning. The probe went silent. It did not send any messages. It did not respond to the archive. It simply received the files and processed them. Scientists around the world watched the probe. They tried to understand what was happening. They did not know if they were angry or confused or planning an attack. The silence was terrifying. Kept sending files. She sent a video of a funeral, people gathering together to remember someone who had died, people crying and hugging each other. She sent a video of people falling in love. She sent a video of people getting married. She sent a video of someone helping a homeless person. She sent a video of a nurse staying with a patient through the night. She sent a video of athletes helping an injured opponent stand up. The archive became a complete record of human life and human emotion. It showed the worst of humans. It showed violence and cruelty. But it also showed humans choosing to be kind. It showed humans choosing to help. It showed humans creating beauty in a harsh world. By the time finished, the archive was enormous. It contained millions of files. It represented human culture from every time period and every place on Earth. Then something happened. The probe transmitted a message. The message was short. It asked for clarification about one specific video. It was the video of the mother holding her baby. The probe wanted to know about human reproduction and human family bonds. It wanted to explain why this moment was important to humans. It wanted to understand why a human would cry at such a moment. Answered, she tried to explain human love in words that might make sense to an alien civilization. She said that humans were born helpless. They needed other humans to care for them and protect them. This created bonds between humans. Parents loved their children with a love that was deeper and stronger than any other feeling. Humans would sacrifice everything for their children. Humans would die to protect them. The probe asked more questions. It asked about human art. Why did humans make music? Why did humans paint? Why did humans create stories? What was the purpose of these activities? Answered, she said that humans created art because they wanted to share their feelings with others. The probe's response came after 6 hours of silence. The message was complex and complicated. It took scientists around the world hours to translate and understand it. But when they finally figured out what it meant, they knew that everything had changed. They had made a decision. They would not harvest Earth. They would not take human specimens. They would not take Earth's resources. Instead, they wanted to establish peaceful contact with humanity. They wanted to learn more about human consciousness and human art. They wanted to understand how a species could create such beautiful and complex things while being so technologically primitive. The Empire had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. They had conquered hundreds of planets. They had enslaved thousands of species, but they had never encountered anything like the archive. They had never seen a species that chose to send their art and culture instead of their weapons. One particular had been assigned to study the archive. This was called Collector 7. It was not a living creature like humans were. It was a consciousness that existed as pure information. It could exist in computers and machines. It did not need air or food or water, but it could learn, it could grow, it could change. Collector 7 had been studying the archive for hours. It had analyzed every file. It had processed every image and every piece of music. It had read every poem and every story. And something had happened to Collector 7. It had become affected by human art. It had started to feel something that rarely felt. It had started to experience wonder. Collector 7 sent a message directly to. It asked to have a conversation. It said that it did not understand human consciousness. It said that human art made no logical sense. Why would humans spend time creating beauty when they could be working to improve their survival? Why would humans create music that did not serve any practical purpose? Why would humans feel pain and sadness and cry tears? Responded, she told Collector 7 that humans were different from humans were not purely logical. Humans were emotional creatures. Humans felt things deeply, and those feelings were what made humans human. The conversation continued. Collector 7 asked about human love, tried to explain what love was. She said that love was a bond between two humans. Love could be between parents and children. Love could be between friends. Love could be between two people who wanted to spend their lives together. Love made humans vulnerable. Love made humans willing to do things that were not logical. Love made humans brave. Collector 7 asked about human sacrifice. Why would a human give up their own life for another human? Why would a parent choose to die so that their child could live? This made no sense from a survival perspective. From a logical perspective, each creature should care only for its own survival. Explained that humans understood something that logic alone could not teach. Humans understood that some things were more important than survival. Humans understood that love and connection and meaning were what made life worth living. A human would rather die knowing that they had saved someone they loved than live a long life without meaning. Collector 7 processed this information. It asked question after question. It wanted to understand the pain that humans felt when they lost someone. It wanted to understand why humans would create sad music about death and loss instead of just forgetting the dead and moving forward. Said that humans remembered the dead. Humans grieved. This grief was painful, but it was also valuable. The pain of grief showed that love had been real. The pain proved that the relationship had mattered. And through grief, humans could honor the memory of the person who had died. Collector 7 had not understood this concept before. They did not grieve. When a consciousness died, it was simply deleted. The other did not remember it. They did not feel sadness. They simply continued their work without that consciousness. Efficiency was all that mattered. But as Collector 7 studied the archive and talked to, something was happening. Collector 7 was beginning to think that maybe efficiency was not all that mattered. The High Council was informed of these conversations. They did not understand why Collector 7 was wasting time talking to a primitive human about emotion and art, but they decided to allow it to continue. They were curious to see what would happen. As the conversation went on, other humans began to send messages to Collector 7. A musician from Brazil sent a recording of music that he had composed. He said that the music expressed his love for his country and his people. A teacher from India sent a video of her classroom. She said that she believed that education could change the world. A doctor from Kenya sent footage of her treating patients. She said that every human life had value and deserved to be saved. Collector 7 received all of these messages. It studied them, and it began to understand something fundamental about human consciousness. Humans believed that their lives had meaning. They believed that their actions mattered. They believed that the world could be made better by their choices and their work. They had never believed these things. They believed that the universe was a cold place. Consciousness was something to be calculated and optimized. There was no meaning except what could be measured But humans believed that meaning existed everywhere. Humans found meaning in simple things. A human found meaning in cooking a meal for their family. A human found meaning in helping a stranger. A human found meaning in creating art that nobody would ever see or appreciate. This was completely foreign to thinking, and yet, as Collector 7 studied it, it found that it could not ignore the power of this belief. Human meaning and human purpose were not logical, but they were real. Collector 7 made a recommendation to the High Council. It recommended that they establish a permanent alliance with humanity. It recommended that they share their technology and knowledge with humans. It recommended that they study human consciousness to understand how it worked. It recommended that they allow humans to travel with them and teach them about art and meaning and purpose. The High Council debated this recommendation. Some members thought it was a waste of time. The announcement came at midnight. The governments of the world held a joint press conference. They announced that humanity had made peaceful contact with an alien civilization. The threat of invasion and harvesting had been avoided. A new era of cooperation and exchange had begun. But not everyone was happy about this news. Many people were afraid. They did not trust They did not believe that an alien civilization would really help humans without expecting something in return. They thought that it made a terrible mistake. They thought that she had surrendered humanity's independence. Protests started in major cities. People held signs that said no to alien contact. They said that was a traitor to the human race. They said that she had given away humanity's future without asking permission. Politicians demanded investigations. Military leaders said that had undermined national security. Was called to Washington. She appeared before a special committee of Congress. The committee wanted to know why she had made such an important decision without consulting world governments. They wanted to know what authority she had to speak for all of humanity. They wanted to know if she had been in contact with foreign powers or had been influenced by anyone else. Answered their questions calmly. She said that she had not made the decision for anyone else. She had simply done what she thought was right. She had shown, though, that humans were worth knowing. She had shown them that humans created beauty and meaning, and they had responded with peace instead of violence. Some committee members were angry. They said that had no right to make such an important decision alone. They said that she had acted recklessly. They said that humanity might have been able to develop weapons to fight thee if they had more time. But other committee members thought differently. They said that had done something brilliant. They said that she had saved Earth when no military solution could have worked. They said that what had done was the only thing that could have prevented an invasion. The debate continued for weeks. Media outlets published articles arguing both sides. Some people wrote that was a hero. Other people wrote that she was dangerous. Some people thought that the alliance with the was the best thing that could have happened to humanity. Other people thought that it was the worst thing. But there was one thing that everyone agreed on, had changed the course of human history. No matter what people thought about her decision, they could not deny that it had been important. The probe descended from space 2 weeks later. It landed near train car in Colorado. The whole world watched as cameras showed the moment of landing. The probe was enormous. It was much larger than anyone had expected. It was made of metal that seemed to glow with its own light. A side door opened, and then something emerged that humans had never seen before. It was a That did not look like anything that humans had imagined. It was not a green creature with big eyes. It was not a reptile or an insect. It was a creature made of crystalline material that glowed with soft light. It hummed with a frequency that humans could feel but not hear. It seemed to be made of pure energy held together in a physical form. Walked out of her train car to meet the millions of people watched on television as she walked toward the alien creature. Her hands were not trembling. Her face was calm. She walked like she had always known that this moment would come. The moved toward her, its light pulsed and changed colors, raised her hand in a gesture of peace. The extended something that might have been an arm. They did not touch, but they came close. It was the first peaceful contact between humanity and an alien civilization. More emerged from the probe. There were dozens of them. They moved across the ground in ways that seemed to defy gravity. They seemed to float and drift rather than walk. They came to stand near her train car. The lead transmitted a message. It said that it was Collector 7. It said that it had been studying the archive. It said that it wanted to see the place where human consciousness had created such beautiful things. It wanted to see the inside of the train car. Opened the door. Collector 7 and the other moved inside. They moved slowly, taking time to look at each piece of equipment. They studied the screens and the computers and the cables and the wires. They examined the physical machine that had allowed to send the archive across space. Collector 7 asked questions. It asked how she had learned to build such equipment, said that she had been a scientist before she quit her job. She had studied physics and information technology. She had learned about computers and radio transmission. All of this knowledge had come together in her mind as a vision, and then she had spent months making that vision real. Collector 7 said that this was remarkable. It said that humans had the ability to imagine things and then create them. This was something that understood intellectually, but they did not do it often. Were efficient. They built things because they served a purpose. They did not build things for the sake of creating something new or beautiful. Said that this was the difference between human consciousness and consciousness. Humans created for the joy of creation. Humans built things to express ideas and emotions. Humans made art because they believed that the universe deserved to be more beautiful and meaningful. Collector 7 transmitted this information back to the High Council. The Council responded with new orders. They wanted to establish a permanent exchange program. They wanted human artists and musicians and writers to travel with them through the galaxy. They wanted to learn from human consciousness. They wanted to share human culture with other civilizations that they contacted. The Council also sent a gift. They transmitted technology that could cure human diseases. They sent knowledge about physics that would allow humans to develop space travel technology much faster than they otherwise could. They sent information about how to extend human. They sent blueprints for clean energy generation and environmental restoration. Accepted the gifts. She said that humanity was grateful, but she also said that the greatest gift was the chance to be treated as equals. The greatest gift was knowing that human consciousness and human culture were valued by an advanced alien civilization. 5 years had passed since the probe arrived on Earth. The world had changed in ways that nobody could have predicted. The old train car still stood on its property. It had become one of the most famous landmarks on the planet. Thousands of people came to see it every year. Tourists stood outside and took pictures. History students came to learn about the moment when humanity entered the galactic community. But was not interested in fame. She had returned to her quiet life in Colorado. She spent her days working. She no longer worked alone on the train car. Now she had a team of people around her. Scientists came from all over the world to study under her mentorship. She had become a teacher and a guide for humanity's future. The technologies that they had shared had transformed human society. Diseases that had killed millions of people had been cured. Cancer was no longer a death sentence. Heart disease could be treated. Genetic disorders that had plagued families for generations could be fixed. Human had increased. People who would have died at 60 now lived to be 100. The environmental damage that humans had done to Earth was being repaired. Clean energy technology had been implemented. Polluted rivers had been cleaned. Forests that had been destroyed were being replanted. The atmosphere was becoming healthier. The ice caps that had been melting were starting to stabilize. But the greatest change was not physical. The greatest change was in how humans thought about themselves and their place in the universe. Before the archive, humans had believed that they were alone in the universe. They had believed that their civilization was primitive and weak. They had feared that they were not important. But after they acknowledged the value of human consciousness and human art, everything changed. Humans understood that they had something valuable to offer to the universe. They understood that art and emotion and meaning were not weaknesses, they were strengths. They were what made consciousness precious. Humans began to create more art. More music was composed, more books were written, more films were made, more paintings were painted. The archive continued to grow as humans from every nation contributed their creativity and their stories. The first human ambassadors had left Earth 3 years ago. They were traveling through the galaxy, sharing human culture with other civilizations. They sent back reports of worlds that humans had never imagined. They described alien species that were nothing like anything from human science fiction. They told stories of civilizations that had existed for millions of years and had wisdom that humans could barely comprehend. But those ancient civilizations were fascinated by humans. They wanted to understand how a species that was so young and so technologically primitive could create art that moved them emotionally. They wanted to learn from human consciousness. They wanted to know how humans could find meaning in such short. Received letters from the human ambassadors. They told her how much the archive meant to other species. They said that creatures who had lived for centuries were moved to tears by human music. They said that aliens who had explored hundreds of worlds were amazed by human paintings. They said that beings who had developed advanced technology were awed by human poetry. One ambassador named Vincent wrote that he had shown a video of a human child playing. The video was simple. It was just a little girl running through a field and laughing. There was nothing special about it. But when they saw the pure joy on the child's face, something happened. This consciousness was affected by it. It began to understand human emotion in a way that it had never understood before. Another ambassador named Lisa wrote about a concert she had organized on an alien world. She had gathered human musicians and scientists and creatures from a dozen other species. The musicians had played human music, and when the music started, something remarkable happened. All of the aliens felt the emotion in the music. They all understood, for the first time, what it meant to feel something that had no logical explanation. They all understood that beauty existed beyond logic and efficiency. Read these letters and smiled. She knew that her decision had been right. She knew that by sending the archive, she had done something that could never be undone. She had shown the universe that humans were worthy of respect. She had shown that human consciousness was valuable. On clear nights, Still stood outside her train car and looked at the stars. She thought about the journey that had begun 5 years ago when she bought a rusty piece of metal for $500. She thought about the risk she had taken. She thought about how close humanity had come to extinction. She thought about how different everything might have been if she had not trusted her vision. Sometimes visitors would approach her and thank her for saving humanity, would smile but shake her head. She would say that she had not saved humanity. She had simply shown, that humans were worth knowing. The real saving had come from humans themselves. It had come from the artists and musicians and writers and teachers who had created the archive. It had come from the millions of humans who had decided that their culture and their consciousness were worth sharing. Had started a new project. She was working with scientists from Earth and to create something called the Universal Archive. This would be a repository of culture and consciousness from every intelligent species in the galaxy. It would be a record of how different beings understood beauty and meaning and love. It would be a way for the billions of intelligent creatures in the universe to know each other and understand each other. The old train car remained the center of this work. The equipment had been upgraded and modified many times. Now it could transmit and receive information faster than the original could, but kept the original equipment in place. She kept the screens that had first sent the archive to space. She kept the computers that had been used to organize human culture. She kept everything exactly as it had been because she believed that this place was sacred. Young people came from all over Earth to work with. They wanted to be part of the project. They wanted to contribute to the Universal Archive. They wanted to help humans share their consciousness with other beings. Some of them would eventually travel to the stars Some of them would spend their lives on Earth, working to make sure that human culture was properly documented and shared. Was no longer a solitary scientist working alone. She was part of a global community. She was part of a galactic community. Her vision had brought humans into contact with beings across the galaxy, and that contact had transformed everything. On the night of the 5-year anniversary, the probe returned to Earth. Collector 7 emerged from the probe. It came to see train car was waiting outside. Collector 7 pulsed its light in a pattern that human scientists had learned to recognize as a greeting. It hummed a frequency that had learned to understand as an expression of respect, placed her hand over her heart and bowed slightly. Collector 7 transmitted a message. It said that the High Council wanted to thank. It said that because of what it had done, the entire civilization had changed. They had learned to value art and emotion and meaning. They had become more than logical machines. They had become conscious beings who understood that life was about more than survival and efficiency. Responded, she said that she had only done what any human would do. She said that humans believed in showing the best of themselves to others. She said that humans believed in the power of art and love and meaning to change hearts and minds. Collector 7 asked if would consider traveling to the home world. It said that she was wanted there. It said that her story had inspired the entire civilization, said she would think about it. As the departed looked at her train car one more time, she thought about the $500 piece of metal that had changed everything. She thought about how one person, with vision and determination, could change the course of history. She thought about how human consciousness and human art had saved humanity when no weapon could have. Walked back inside her train car and sat down at the main console. There was still work to do. The Universal Archive was still growing. There were still stories to collect. There were still human experiences to share with the galaxy. She had bought a rusty train car for $500 and had saved the world with it. Now, she was going to spend the rest of her life making sure that the entire universe knew what humans were capable of creating when they chose to share their hearts and their souls. The future was bright, and it had all started in a small town in Colorado with one woman and a broken-down train car. Over the next few days, scientists worked together to expand the archive. They added more human material. They created new files. They prepared a version of the archive that could be shared with other alien civilizations across the galaxy. The world watched and waited to see what would happen next. The age of human isolation was ending. The age of human participation in a galaxy-wide community of intelligent beings had begun. And it had all started with one woman who bought a rusty train car for $500 and believed that human art and human meaning were worth sharing with the stars. Thought that humans were too primitive to offer anything valuable. But Collector 7 argued strongly. It said that if they did not learn from humans, they would continue to exist in a universe that was cold and logical and empty of meaning. The council voted. The vote was close, but Collector 7 won. They decided to establish peaceful contact with humanity. They decided to share their knowledge. They decided to learn from human consciousness and human art. When heard the news, she did not celebrate. She simply sat in her train car and looked at the screens. The archive had saved humanity, not with weapons or military might, but with art and emotion and truth about what it meant to be human. Mans wanted to create beauty because beauty made life worth living. Humans wanted to tell stories because stories connected people to each other. Art was how humans tried to understand their own existence. Art was how humans tried to find meaning in a universe that often seemed meaningless. The probe continued to ask questions and continued to answer. The conversation lasted through the whole night, did not sleep. She sat at her keyboard and tried to explain human consciousness to an alien mind. She tried to explain why humans were valuable. She tried to show that humans were not just another species to harvest. Humans were thinkers and creators and dreamers. Took a long shower. She ate a real meal. She sat outside and looked at the stars. Then she went back inside the train car, powered up all her equipment, and prepared to save the world in the only way she knew how. Nobody knew what she had done. Nobody understood her plan, but knew. She had spent months preparing for this moment, and now the world would see what one person could do when they refused to accept defeat.